There are dozens, if not more, of wonderful instructional videos, troubleshooting your sourdough technique, walking you through everything. That's not the purpose of my video today. I am just an everyday Aussie mum taking care of my family here on my small property in New South Wales, Australia, and I just want to show you how I have managed to incorporate sourdough baking as part of my daily routine here in the kitchen. Now, I know when I was starting to learn sourdough, I felt quite overwhelmed and didn't really understand how I could make this work on a day-to-day basis, because when I was reading a recipe or watching a video without actually doing the process, it felt much more involved and convoluted and confusing than it truly is once you're doing it. Why sourdough bread? Well, fermenting the grains that we are using, fermenting the flour, helps to reduce the effects of the phytic acid, which is an anti-nutrient. It can irritate the gut and it can cause stomach problems. Many of us associate with consuming gluten. So if we're going to hydrate and break down the flour and ferment it, we're going to prevent those anti-nutrients from affecting us. We're going to allow the nutrition in wheat to be more easily absorbed. And that's why sourdough and fermenting your grains can be such a beneficial process in the home kitchen. Now, I love the fact that I can use my sourdough starter in things like pancakes and flatbreads, as well as the normal bread loaf that I get going every day here in my country kitchen. Now let's talk about the routine. This is how my day starts with my sourdough routine in the kitchen. First thing in the morning, before I feed myself, before I have a hot cup of tea, I am going to nurture my starter first. I'm just going to pop in 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of water, and mix that up into a lovely consistency similar to yogurt. And I'm just going to pop the lid back on, put that to the side until lunchtime. Now, the mornings are busy around here. That is school time, that is animal chores, all kinds of work getting done. So I don't worry again about my sourdough bread until after lunch. So we'll have lunch, somebody else will clean the kitchen, which is the way that it should go, and then I will be mixing up my sourdough dough, my bread. Now, this is so extraordinarily simple. It is so much easier than yeasted bread. It takes so much less work. So what I'm going to do is, and I have these ratios written out below in the description box if you want to try these recipes. For a family-sized loaf, I'm going to pop 2 cups of warmish water into a big mixing bowl. I'm going to put 3/4 of a cup of that bubbly active starter on top of the water. Now that should float right on top of that water, and that tells you that loaf will be light and fluffy. Then I am going to stir in 3 teaspoons of high quality sea salt, and I am going to incorporate 5 1/4 cups of flour into my dough. Now, while you are learning the ropes with sourdough, as I still am, I highly recommend sticking with a light, fluffy flour that is going to give you encouraging, delicious, predictable results. Now, I can link below in the description box to the flour that I am using, which is absolutely faultless. It has turned out beautiful, quality, and very tasty bread. And it is an organic, high protein baker's flour from Honest to Goodness. Now, after you have combined your dough together, now it's rough, it's shaggy, you're not kneading it, it's not perfect. You're going to cover it with a tea towel and pop the dough aside. And for me, for my scatterbrain, or my brain that is always thinking about many, many things in our home, I set an alarm to come back 30 minutes later. Now, that time period is just to allow the dough to settle and the flour to absorb all the starter and water and salt that you have mixed in. The alarm goes off, the 30 minutes is up, and you are ready to get your hands into that beautiful dough and perform your first set of stretch and folds. Now, as you can see me do in the video, I am simply pulling at a quarter of the dough, stretching it up as far as I can into the air with the natural elasticity, which will develop in time. It won't be very easy to do the very first time. Then I'm tucking it over on top of itself to the other side, turning the bowl a quarter, and then doing this 4 times so that every edge of the dough is tucked over onto itself. This is a process that just comes naturally to you with time. Now, after the first set of stretch and folds, I set my alarm for 15 minutes and I come back and perform another series of stretch and folds. I set the alarm for 15 minutes and I come back and perform a third set of stretch and folds. And then I'm going to set my alarm for 30 minutes, perform one last set of stretch and folds, cover my dough, set it aside, and then it will perform its bulk ferment for about between 3 and 6 hours on my kitchen bench top. 6 hours in winter, 3 hours in summer. Now, this is me following the advice of Lisa from Farmhouse on Boone, who is a sourdough expert for sure. And I just wanted to be certain that my loaves would turn out well. I wanted to be rewarded for my work and my time with a really enjoyable loaf. So I'm putting in the effort that's required to make sure it really is delicious. And if you are a beginner, before you start to cut down on technique or time and take shortcuts, which absolutely can happen, I have confidence of that, I do recommend trying this technique so that you are certain your dough will turn out great. Now, after your stretch and folds, which have just been throughout the afternoon, you've been at home, you've been handling other things, you've been popping in and out of the kitchen as needed, performing the stretch and folds, which probably take 15 seconds, and then a quick hand wash afterwards. They are so super quick. Less than a minute each, definitely. You have set your dough aside for the bulk ferment, and you've gotten through dinner time, and now it is time to shape your dough and pop it in the fridge for an overnight ferment. Now, this process is equally simple, equally quick and easy. It's just a matter of scraping your dough out onto the bench gently, flopping it over on itself, and honestly, I don't even know if you need to do all these things. My dough has turned out great without the tensioning, without rolling it into a ball, and look at how messy that is that I am popping back into my shaping bowl, and it's just a bowl which is lined with baking paper. That makes it super easy to pop into a cast iron pot when I am ready to bake. And I've just plopped it into the bowl there, and this is something that I am using a plastic bag for over and over again because it does the job so perfectly. I'm enclosing it in a big plastic bag and putting it in the fridge overnight for a minimum of 14 hours. So for me, I have this in the fridge at about 6 o'clock each night, and then by 8 a.m. after breakfast the next day, I am preheating my oven. Now let's talk about that. I put my cast iron pot into the oven, then I turn the oven on as hot as it can go, 260 degrees, for a full hour preheating before I bake my bread. Now, here on the bench is my bread that has been fermenting overnight. This is a beautiful sourdough loaf now that has fermented and is lovely. Now, it looks kind of flat and, maybe underwhelming. That's how I felt the first time I was baking it. I thought, here I am. Here I go. This is going to be another fail. Well, I was wrong. Following those directions really did fluff up some beautiful, bubbly air holes inside this loaf, and just have faith that yours will too. Now, you do not have to do any kind of fancy scoring technique on top, but you really do need to slash at least across into the top of your bread to help it to expand and get big and light and fluffy. So you can see the way that you feel pulling that pot of bread out of the oven. It is just so rewarding. And once you have the technique down pat, once you have gone through this set of steps 1 or 2 days in a row, you will find out how easy this is to incorporate. Maybe you want to get this done every day, for maybe you have a large family and you need a fresh loaf of bread every day. Maybe you want to get this done once a week or twice or 2 or 3 times a week. And that way you will keep your family in beautiful, nourishing, fresh bread. For me, for my budget, this is a third of the price of paying a local baker to make my family sourdough bread. So I am absolutely thrilled with the outcome of learning this technique and having these skills. Now I will have my upscaled recipe in the box below. This recipe here is the standard, which calls for 3.5 cups of flour, but I have now upscaled it to serve my family of 8 so that I don't have to bake every day, to 5.25 cups of flour. And that way we have enough to eat on the day that I bake it and also for toast in the morning the next day. So I probably will be baking bread every second day as we go. Now, the forgiving thing about sourdough bread is once you get to the stage of popping it in the fridge, you can leave it there for a few days until you get around to baking it. So that's it. That's my daily routine for incorporating sourdough into our home, and I am so pleased with actually how simple and straightforward this is once you get the hang of it. I hope this has been helpful to any of you who are wanting to experiment with sourdough. And if you have enjoyed this content, please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!